broadcast or starting recording now after you clearly hit record.
We're actually recording now.
Right.
But it's an indescribable amount of time. You're indiscernible, rather. It's not as though it counts you in and says 3, 2, 1. It's just like,
okay,
sometimes we're recording immediately.
Exactly. Yeah, it's
sometimes we're not.
I guess that's an awesome way to start a broadcast. Whatever.
Yeah, it's even better when I rip the audio from the YouTube, put it into the podcast format or just the plain audio format, and people are like, what the fuck are you talking about? Why do you keep complaining about this? And then I don't edit it out because, frankly, I don't give enough of shits.
Right. 0 shits given.
But we're here for the Overtime MMA broadcast. And this is where shit's really going to be fun because the UFC Zagreb card sucks. And we talked about how it sucked for 45 minutes, which I don't know if you listened to, because why would you listen to somebody talk about something that's not good for 45 minutes?
Right.
It's kind of like WrestleMania fans. I loved abusing the WrestleMania hashtag while WrestleMania was on. And I got into a fucking argument with a guy, Brian. I thought I'm not trying to be fun. I'm being very honest. At a certain point, I thought that he might be mentally handicapped. And so I went onto his page to look at his posts.
Yeah.
Because I'm like, if he's talking about, whatever, I'm not going to make stereotypes.
Liking Donald Trump or something, I guess.
Yeah. There you go. I'm sitting there. I'm trying not to, are his interests eating glue? What's going on here? And then it was like hardcore porno. And I'm like, what the fuck? Some crazy British guy because I don't like Roman Reigns. And I was like, this guy is fucking crazy. And then I found out the reason that his comments back didn't make any sense is because he was copying and pasting the same thing to like hundreds of people, just being like, he's Samoan, you don't know him, he's good. What does that have to do with shit? But my point being is that WrestleMania 32 kind of sucked, and I didn't enjoy it very much, but I wasn't alone. I had a bunch of people to confide in on Twitter and just talk mad amounts of shit with.
Right.
And those are the people who pay to watch it. Those are people who patronize the service. So, I mean, that's a person, that's like their Super Bowl, and all they're doing is talking shit. And I felt pretty good about myself because I realized we don't talk as much shit. Maybe that's why I kind of took free license with the UFC's Greb talk, but we really aren't that negative, to be honest. Like, if you look, we try and find the silver lining in every fight card.
And
but
I mean, generally speaking, anything we do talk negatively about, there is like a light undertone to it. It's not like it's like a set in stone. We're absolutely so negative about this, and I'm just like, fuck it.
Sending Joe Silva, fruit baskets to say retire or anything like that. It's just, obviously, like, I get that his options are limited, and I get that it's an untested market and that they can exploit it. To be fair, they're gonna make money at that market no matter what. The fact is that globally they're not, and that's something that bothers me, is that they didn't put on a product for the global audience. Because if you're a local audience, it's the first time being at UFC, well, shit, it's unique and it's special in the sense that it's the first time the UFC's been there.
Right.
But it's not my first time watching UFC at home, so fuck me, right? I guess. I just realized that Brian's wearing an As I Dying shirt, which is very amusing to me. For those of you who don't know about Tim Lambesis,
he's a swell guy.
Yeah, super cool dude, and he's recording an album from prison.
Is he really?
Yeah, via the phone, because the hip hop guys can do it. Why can't I?
Huh.
Okay.
Interesting.
Tim. Weird.
I mean, I thought he was kind of off the deep end when he was doing the whole Arnold Schwarzenegger medal.
Oh my God, Austrian Death Machine is like some of the best music of all time. Get to the chopper! I like his conversations with Arnold Schwarzenegger. For those of you who don't know, let's look at the band on Spotify, Austrian Death Machine.
I mean, it's a great band.
Oh yeah,
you gotta admit it.
And it's all songs based on Arnold Schwarzenegger movies.
If it bleeds, we could kill it.
I am a cybernetic organism, living tissue of a metal endoskeleton. That is the chorus of a song, which is rad.
Right.
And then he has like these little prank phone calls with Arnold and stuff. And one of the things I stole for a long time was, I'm the gummy bear of Candy Cornia. So that was more entertaining than WrestleMania 32. Did you like anything of it?
I mean, we talked a little bit about it earlier, and you kind of were totally just like, oh, that was awful for you. I liked it. I mean, I like seeing the old school wrestlers come back, regardless if it's just a continuous recycled garbage that they do every single
Like,
WrestleMania.
okay, who the fuck? Like, let's suspend our disbelief, and we're saying that wrestling is real. How fucking stupid do you have to be anywhere near Stone Cold Steve Austin and be in any position ever?
Right.
If you're too happy, you're going to get a stunner. If you're too prudish, you're going to get a stunner. If you're anything but Stone Cold, you're going to get a stunner. And sometimes Stone Cold has been stunnered. So you're just never safe from the stunner if you're in the WWE.
Right.
I mean,
Didn't Stone Cold was he married to Sable at one time?
No, it was Deborah. But then,
Deborah, that's right.
He beat her, so she
probably got a couple stunners, huh?
Oh yeah, he punched her in the back of the head one time. He punched her in the face, then as she was falling down, he punched her in the back of the head.
Wow.
That's the first time that I really like looked into like WrestleZone.com, which is where they do like a lot of the news reporting. And at that point, I was like, I'm done. I can't even recreational. I can't do it. You've gone way too far off the reservation.
Right. It's either Chris Benoit or Stone Cold Steve Austin. It's like either a wife beater or a. I'm not even going to touch that.
You either die a hero or you live long enough to see yourself become Stone Cold Steve Austin.
We're calling him a hero. Okay.
It was the Batman thing. Remember, it was like you're either die.
I get it. But I mean,
well, he used to be. You know, he was like he used to be the $1 million man. He used to have long hair and wear tights, and then he suddenly became the bad guy.
He had one too many flying headbutts, man. Yeah. It's just.
Oh no, I was talking about Stone Cold.
Oh, I thought you were saying you either die a hero or you live long enough to become Stone Cold. So you're either dying as in Chris
No. Let's clarify that for the folks at home. Not saying Chris Benoit is a hero by any stretch of the means.
But I mean, that does bring into light what is that main head trauma
CTE.
CTE.
Yeah.
I mean, God, you got to imagine that had to have come into play.
Oh yeah, the guy the coroner who did the autopsy for Chris Benoit said that he would have expected that brain to be the condition of like a 70-plus-year-old with Alzheimer's.
Right.
It was so degenerated and so damaged that it was amazing that Chris Benoit was even able to function and speak, let alone.
Right, and then that coupled with probably pain supplements. It's just like
steroids.
It's a very steroids, pain supplements, alcohol. It's a lovely cocktail.
Oh yeah. And speaking of cocktails, Stone Cold had cocktails, and he stunnered some guy who was dressed in the Saiyan armor from Dragon Ball Z, which I don't understand. But hey, why the fuck not? The thing I have to criticize with WrestleMania 32 is that Shane McMahon.
Shane O'Mac
was wrestling The Undertaker.
I mean, okay, I get it. The Undertaker just recently lost to Brock Lesnar in WrestleMania to basically like end the streak, right? And it was like a huge fucking deal. I get that.
You've seen that picture, the video of the guy reacting, right?
No.
Oh my God.
No.
After this episode is over, Brian and I are going to watch the reactions. And if you've never done it, you need to pause our episode right now. Go to YouTube, put in Undertaker WrestleMania reactions, and you will see full-grown men being like,
cry. Are they
what?
crying?
Like,
are they crying?
I don't remember.
Okay.
I just remember one guy holding his head in his hands like his whole life has been a fucking lie because they went off script. And he's like looking at him like, oh, clearly the referee didn't get a copy of the script last night before the dress rehearsal. What the fuck?
So it went off script?
No, it did. That's right. But he's in his mind, he's like, the Undertaker wins. The sun rises in the morning, sets in the evening, Undertaker wins in WrestleMania.
It makes sense. Okay, that makes sense.
But so the idea, my criticism is this: it's Jay Leno syndrome, which is to say, in WCW, Jay Leno once wrestled Hulk Hogan and was winning, and I think he even won. My problem with that is, how are you going to say that somebody with no wrestling training is as good as your best? Right. Undertaker's this prolific guy, and Shane O'Mac is a pencil pusher, and he's able to somehow. No. Like, I get when Shane McMahon wrestled Kurt Angle, I think it was Survivor Series, where he goes through the glass. You remember that one?
Right.
That was cool because the whole thing was just Kurt Angle pretty much walloping this asshole who wouldn't die. But then it was like the same kind of thing at WrestleMania, except Shane's hair was grayer, Undertaker's hairline was farther back, and it was just sad in completely different ways. We lost our one live viewer. Really?
when we were talking about
Oh,
wrestling.
we got a live viewer. We got a live viewer again. Woo! We're not going to talk about wrestling the whole time. Don't you worry. I'm just going to talk some shit and be done with this fucking thing.
We're practically at that point.
But my point being, what the fuck?
I mean, they're going to rehash the same shit. It's essentially it's a mini Vince McMahon, and they have to have the feud going with Vince McMahon and
We
Shane
lost
McMahon.
the viewer.
And I threw too many McMahons. I feel like that might have done the trick.
Damn it. But yeah, you're fired. Yeah, if you have exactly Vince McMahon for president 2020.
I mean, over Trump. I mean, don't want to get political here, but
I would. Okay, I could pluck a wad of gooch hairs from my grundle, braid it, put it on a podium, and I would vote for that over Donald Trump. And any self-respecting human being would do the same. Fucking kidding me. The best argument I have for Donald Trump.
vote for Gooch hair.
Yeah, gooch hair over Trump. If I'm going to Donald Trump, right? Would you, Donald Trump, hire someone to manage a casino with no experience? No.
Nope.
So why would I hire you to manage a fucking country with no political experience? But I digress. To Brian's point, yes, Vince McMahon will be a better president. I think it would be fucking great.
All right, let's get back on.
I think that Vladimir Putin would like Vince McMahon as a person, if you want to go there. Because imagine the missile crisis negotiations there. They're just going to wrestle shirtless for a while and get tired, drink some vodka, shoot some steroids, and watch other men grapple.
Fair enough. Okay.
Competitors to the UFC. We're going to go to Bellator. Bellator, 3 of their recent UFC cast-offs made headlines this week talking about how their experiences negotiating with the UFC were so terrible. Benson Henderson went so far as to say, you don't negotiate with the UFC. Matt Mitrione was saying they take from your left pocket and your right. And then who's his face? Phil Davis said something. But the point being, it was just like, it's interesting to me. They kind of did. Rampage Jackson years ago did this when he got signed by Bellator. He's like, this is the fucking greatest. They know how to treat fighters. And then he was like, they don't know how to treat fighters.
Then he
That
went
is
back
not
to
the
the
greatest.
UFC. Yeah. It's almost just like like you were saying earlier. It's like whoever's daddy, you're gonna be talking bad against whoever's
These guys are Ronin. You have to realize that these are effectively mercenaries, right?
Right.
You're going to the highest bidder, and this is the highest bidder. So of course you're going to want to stay in their good graces, and I have no problem with that. It's just weird how orchestrated it feels. It feels like this was like they got a press release or they got some kind of email thread, and they're like, oh yeah, we should probably all say this. They're like, Viacom not so subtly sends them a message. It's got like a cute kitten clip art in it or something. It's like, hey guys, remember how much you love us and how much you don't love where you came from. They're like, hey, you know what? We wouldn't like this so much if we hadn't come from such a shitty place. So you're like, how when you step indoors, it's really cold outside. You're really cold. So you come inside, it's nice and warm. Well, it only feels good that it's warm because you were cold before. So they're going, hey, remember how awful the UFC was? Now you're warm by our fire. And they're like, yeah, we should talk about how much we hate the cold. And it just feels a little too orchestrated for 3 grown men to be like, man, I really hate the cold, even though I haven't been in the cold for a while.
That is true.
Well, my point being, I thought that was kind of weird. We kind of touched on a podcast that Rory McDonald might find himself in Bellator at one point.
I feel like it would be a smart move. I feel like he'd be able to sell the shit out of it, and I feel like he's a lot. Not throwing anything against Benson Henderson, but I feel like he's a little more marketable than Benson Henderson.
Oh yeah, and he's younger than Benson.
Right.
And imagine him fighting Benson. That'd be an awesome fight. I think that Rory physically, even if you take some of his skill away, his physicality alone, I think would be almost insurmountable for Benson Henderson. But it'd be an interesting fight. I'm excited at the prospect of it. I've been, every time I look at fighters, I wonder who's, Bellator bound, as I call it. We were looking at Gabriel Gonzaga in the co-main event of UFC Zagreb. He's a guy who's very likely.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's something that it could, be one of those resurgence. Yeah. It's like, what is this stupid bird that is a flame?
Phoenix.
There you go. Yeah, it's like a phoenix almost, when he dies in the UFC, he comes back.
And that's one of the things when you look at Bellator signing, it's not that they ever sign somebody and bring them up. You know, you have Aaron Pico and stuff like that, but they're not actually fighting or anytime soon. But it's always them taking somebody and restructuring them and building them up, which is an interesting model. But hey, I guess it's sustainable for them. One thing I wanted to touch on was Khabib Nurmagomedov. This is a complete non sequitur, and I really don't fucking care for your criticism, so mind your manners. Khabib Nurmagomedov, he isn't pulling out of his fight. His opponent's pulling out of the fight, and Tony Ferguson. Ferguson saying he's like coughing up blood or something, and that's nice, but it doesn't cure the irony of the situation in that at the Unstoppable press conference, you're like, just make sure you make the fight. I'm wearing sunglasses indoors because that's the cool shit that Kukuis do.
Kukui.
Come on, bro.
I feel like it's a bird call. Is that a new meme?
It should be.
Could possibly be.
Not sure if the boogeyman or really likes birds. But one of the things that Brian and I were talking about was so interesting with Khabib Nurmagomedov is you have champions calling him out.
Right.
That's rad.
Literally right after it happened, which is really cool in that, like, it just shows how competitive the fighters are within that bracket and within like the top 5. Yeah. You know what I mean? Arguably, I mean, what is Cowboy at? I mean, he's
not
probably
ranked. Well, I think I don't know that he's ranked right now, or he shouldn't be ranked.
He shouldn't be.
Technically
He shouldn't be ranked, and he's a different weight class, but at the same time, relatively, as far as a known fighter, it's not somebody who wants to try and be like up and coming to be like, oh, hey, I'm going to try and make a name for myself, this or that. It's somebody who actually already has themselves established, and they actually have something incredibly to lose if they were to lose against Nurmagomedov in a short,
Yeah. If you're RDA and you've already lost to the guy and you're not going to have a full camp going into, well, he called him out for UFC 200, so he'd still get a pretty
substantial fight. Yeah.
But the idea is he's willing, he's able, and he's eager. And
he doesn't want to be a shelf life fighter. You know what I mean? You know, it's essentially, I guess, it's the double-edged sword kind of thing where you look at Holly Holm and you're like, well, should you have waited till Ronda Rousey or? Yeah, because now we just found out before we started the broadcast that Miesha Tate will be fighting Amanda Nunes at UFC 200. So Holly Holm does not get the immediate rematch. So it's interesting because here you have Miesha Tate gets this consolation prize. So that kind of makes you wonder, are they going to have the Ronda Rousey Holly Holm fight after all?
It'd be a good number 1 contender fight, wouldn't it? They're both coming off of losses.
And I mean, it would be an ultimate revenge kind of thing for Ronda Rousey. So, I mean, they can play that.
Hell yeah. So, and you beat the former champion twice. Yeah, you could totally argue that makes you number 1 contender again because she's only lost to the person who's now the champion. I'm kind of honestly a little relieved that they're doing this route. It doesn't make sense in the global span of this person fighting, Ronda. But, because Amanda Nunes for Ronda, there's no spark there. So they could be losing money later on in the year. But I like the fact that on a merit base, Amanda Nunes is a person who we said on the show should get a title shot in a perfect world. So I guess temporarily the world's looking pretty sunshine and rainbows. We had talked about on the show specifically that it seemed like the UFC was loading their UFC 197, 198, 199 really heavily. Right. So if any of those fights fell off, they could end up at UFC 200. And then they fill up UFC 200 with fights that are like, okay, right? Like Travis Brown, Cain Velasquez. Okay. Mm. But is that where's the pizzazz? Like I get that's a cool fight, but where's the consequence? Where's the glitz? Like let's cover this shit in gold tinfoil and send it out. So this is an opportunity. Now we have another title on the card, but we didn't see Jon Jones and Daniel Cormier rescheduled for UFC 200. So we're seeing some stuff where like the UFC sticking to its guns and rather than just pushing it all to the back end, they're still trying to make the best of the shows leading up. And so with that, I think we're kind of at a good spot to talk about Jonathan Jones.
Jones, right.
Yeah, he spends 48 hours in prison. I just stabbed myself in the leg with my pen on accident. He spends 48 hours in jail, not prison, because of his transgressions with his motor vehicle tickets and citations and his uncouth demeanor to Police Officer Brown.
Right.
Making me look an asshole because I provided legal analysis that was completely wrong, apparently. But whatever. So he is the big concern. Everybody's looking at Jon Jones. Is he going to fight? And John's like, fuck yeah, I'm going to fight.
And then DC is just like, peace the fuck out.
Yeah. But then a completely different Jon Jones emerges, who was at UFC 151. Jon Jones, if you remember, was supposed to fight, he was supposed to fight Dan Henderson at 151. Hendo pulls out. Chael Sonnen offers to step up. I think it's 11 days notice. And John's like, no, I'm not going to do that. I'm not fighting on 11 days notice. In this instance, yes, he has 3 weeks. But I really think his motivation is that he made a bargain with a prison gang for protection. Now he's been off. But in all honesty, I think that's awesome. Even though he's probably looking out for his own interest and trying to make money because he hasn't had a fight in over a year, to parade it as, hey, I want to make my fans happy. I want to, be good to them. I want to give back to them. I want to commit myself to being on this card. I want to show that, my preparation. That's cool. You could also just say, I did a lot of fucking sit-ups for this, and I'm not letting it go to waste.
Right. I mean, it's interesting because you look at Jones and the whole aspect of how much of a badass he's been inside the ring, but then the outside influences that happen, and it kind of makes you wonder, like, how to me, it makes me think how serious he is about the whole aspect of the UFC. Like, I feel like he's such a naturally gifted guy that he can just kind of nonchalantly just be like, fuck it, I'm just gonna go do this, I'm gonna do that, and not really care about the consequences. And I mean, yeah, essentially it's gonna come bite him in the ass, but at the same time, he knows anytime he gets back into the ring, he'll probably end up dominating.
Yeah, and it's also, I mean, this is an angle that he can work in the fact that he is taking the challenge where he could still make a pretty significant payday, and like you're saying, it's kind of an easy money mentality. He's fighting a guy in Open St. Preux who's very similar to Anthony Johnson, but just kind of lesser. Like, I feel like Open St. Preux at the end of the day, when his Pokemon evolves, he becomes Anthony Johnson.
Right.
But as of now, I mean, his skill set isn't anything spectacular. Greg Jackson, when he was on the MMA Hour this week, was talking very specifically about, Open's straight left. So he already knows where his highest risks are, and he's willing to take those. So he's got a great team. He's got a good work ethic. He's being driven around. He has a driver now.
I was about to say, Jackson actually hired like a full-time driver for.
It's actually his nutritionist, so it's a person who's already going to be there. So it's like I was sitting there thinking, how many minor league fighters train at Jackson's? There are quite a few of them, from what I understand. When I go on Instagram,
they're
Twitter,
essentially Jon Jones nannies.
Yeah, why wouldn't you pay? Like, I don't understand if you have a guy who's fighting twice a year, why they wouldn't take an extra $50, every couple days to pick up even just gas money to hang out with the greatest fighter of all time and annoy him with music. I would do that.
I would
just
do that
to play like songs like Tiny Tim, do some YouTubing. Find a musician called Tiny Tim and tell me that you would get your rocks off making Jon Jones listen to that at 6 a.m. You are lying if you say otherwise. So, Brian, what do you think of the fight? Him fighting Open OSP? You know what?
I'm giving it. You know what? I want to say second round stoppage. Jones.
I think that if Jones wins, it's going to be by sub or decision. He was even talking about how he planned to kind of like submit Daniel Cormier. Never been like the hugest power guy. But I know this is one of those situations where we've seen so many upsets. I would really love to find a website where I can put $5 down on OSP. The fact is it only takes one. And Jon Jones has never illustrated a suspect chin or anything. I mean, he took some hard shots from Rampage, Gustafsson, DC, and he never seemed any worse for wear.
He doesn't seem to waver at all.
But all of those things accumulated in his brain. You add one more really good straight left, it could happen. And hey, I would love to turn $5 into $500,000. I mean, Jon is a significant favorite in this fight. What do you think of Daniel Cormier extending the offer to Oven St. Preux, saying, "Hey, Oven, so if you want to train here for free, I would totally love to do that."
I mean, I feel like it's kind of a scum move.
Yeah,
it's kind of like one of those, like, I know I'm out of the fight, but I still want to try and get underneath Jon Jones' skin.
Yeah,
and it's like a little dig, and I feel like it's kind of childish. I didn't like it. I mean, out of all the childish things that Jones has done in the past, I don't feel like he would do something like that. But I mean, that's just my opinion.
Jon Jones brought up several good points. It's like, if Daniel Cormier is really the competitor that he's led himself off to be, then he wants Jon to win so he can avenge his only loss. He doesn't want somebody else to beat him.
Right.
So John had John holds all the cards in this deck. Sorry to cut you off.
No, it's fine.
As he stands now, he's going to, very likely he's going to win the interim belt, which, in all honesty, is his belt. Right? He never lost it.
Right.
It's
so
the same
essentially it's going to be him winning the belt that he forfeited, and technically going up against a guy who never actually won the belt.
Yeah, a guy who's been holding out a #1 contendership this whole time. It's a lot like Dominic Cruz. He comes back and he's winning a belt, but he's not winning it. He's just defending.
He's technically, thank you for holding on to that for me.
Yeah. And so now you could say if John wins, he can't necessarily say it's a title defense, but you could say he has X amount of consecutive title victories.
Right.
And I think that's why they're making it for an interim belt, is so that you can use that statistic in future years, because Jon Jones statistically is the one huge outlier in the UFC, and he's a guy who's been fucking unbeatable because everybody else has proven that they are beatable. So I think that it makes sense to do an interim belt in this regard, and I think that.
Well, I mean, what about apparently I read somewhere that after OSP essentially said, hey, I'm good with not training at your fight camp, like DC threw a little shot at him.
Yeah, I was
saying how he would beat him. Like,
that's not cool.
I was like, that's kind of a dick move.
Yeah.
I don't know. I thought that was.
I think I made one good point in I'm going to train with someone who couldn't beat Jon Jones to beat Jon Jones.
Right.
Because he didn't have a foolproof game plan. It's not as though he was doing anything where he almost won. Daniel Cormier clearly lost his fight with Jon Jones. Decisively, it was very pointed. There's no dispute. There's no debate. He lost. And it's not like he had some ace up his sleeve or anything like that, or a strategy that went awry.
Right.
He was going in and being DC, and the quintessential DC couldn't beat the quintessential Jon Jones. And I think that just in physical mechanics, he couldn't get the takedowns the way he wanted to. He couldn't do a lot of the things. And you look at Jon Jones; he has an astronomical frame for the weight class. And arguably, you could say that Daniel Cormier could make 185 with his frame. Obviously, he has a lot of bulk that he'd have to lose, but it just shows you as far as his length and perspective goes. Ovens is a bit bigger. I like you thought that it was very weird that DC kind of made that jab, and I also thought that it was weird, almost as though he was setting Ovens up, because if Ovens wins, then he becomes the interim champion. Then he has to fight.
So DC. He has to fight DC, who just threw out, I can beat Ovens.
Yeah, and also who now knows who you are, has seen all of your training,
has
orchestrated your training. There's always the scene in the movie where the master's like. The guy's like, oh, you are so good at fighting. And he's like, I taught you everything. Almost everything.
Right,
and so that's where Daniel Cormier is like, I didn't show you this one variation, jolly good sport.
Exactly.
So that was all weird. I get the gamesmanship, but I think that, like I said, Jon Jones holds all the cards because he would say, you're a mental midget. You don't want to beat me, right? And he had some solid points. And then when he called Daniel a coward, and Daniel's like, coward is running away from a pregnant woman after you hit her, and this stuff. It's like, yes, that's shit talk, but you can't think I won because John fucked up. It's like, we're talking about this. You're making a tangential argument. We're not talking about that kind of cowardice. We're talking about in this regard, in the linear form of me versus you. So he kind of Daniel keeps trying to skew this narrative and make it seem like, oh yeah, but Jon Jones is a shitty person. I can do whatever, but Jon Jones is a shitty person. Well, the fact is nobody fucking mistook Jon Jones for Mother Teresa. We never thought that he was a good person. We don't care what a good person is.
Outside of the UFC, he can do whatever the fuck he wants. Inside the UFC, he can be a motherfucking badass, and that's what he is.
It's one of those things.
Your point is moot.
Exactly. You're not going to convince. Tell us how you're going to beat him in the octagon, because that's what matters. It does, otherwise, we talked about this kind of before, malum in se versus malum prohibitum, which is to say malum in se is something that's inherently wrong and evil. Malum prohibitum is stuff that's wrong because we prescribe it when we say it's wrong in our society.
Right.
So having an aftermarket muffler, that's wrong because we say it's wrong. It's not beating your wife. It's not setting a dog on fire. It's not anything like that, right? And so for Daniel, just oh, John's terrible because he did drugs once. A lot of people have done drugs. If I, as a straight edge guy, can be like, get the fuck over it, you can get the fuck over it, DC.
It's true. It's
right?
true.
Like, the fact that doesn't make somebody a bad person. It's their recreational choice. If that's what they choose to do. Dude, growing up, my hobby was masturbation. Okay?
Yeah.
That was like, some people, read, some people play Sega. I cranked the shit out of my shaft. My point being, a lot of people criticize me for that, and they're entitled to.
But that's essentially all of the things that DC is using as a case in point against Jones. Like, I feel like that's everything that's happening to Jones is essentially kind of describes like human beings.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? As far as making mistakes and owning up to them and this and that. I mean, that's part of life, right? I mean, it happens. Mistakes happen.
What's also weird that DC is like 10 years older than John.
Right,
and he's
resorting
that level.
And he's pulling these. It seems like it's one of these though. It's like a far reach.
Yeah,
you know what I mean.
He's stretching it. Like, oh yeah, well, because you're a bad person here, because you can't drive an automobile, you can't fight or be a good person
in the UFC. Yeah.
I don't know. It's just weird. Maybe we were spoiled by Dominic Cruz because we kind of keep going back to him as our shit talking champion. But the fact is, Dominic Cruz versus TJ Dillashaw is the best shit talker I've seen in the MMA game because he was pointed. He told TJ what he was going to do. He called his shots. He did all the things that DC and everybody else doesn't do.
Right. I mean, but what's great about DC and Jon Jones comparatively to Cruz and Dillashaw is it's like Dillashaw, like Cruz would talk all this shit and Dillashaw would basically have 2 words to say to him, and it wouldn't really mean anything whatsoever. Whereas you literally flip that completely over and you look at DC talking all this shit to Jon Jones and Jon Jones having to say 2 words and it literally just completely destroys everything DC says. He's just like, well, I beat you, so.
Well, my favorite is that scene that I talk about all the time, the scene leading up to their fight when DC, it was on an embedded, you can find it on YouTube, DC and his cronies versus Jon Jones and their cronies. They're backstage and Daniel's saying all this shit and it keeps coming down to it and Jon Jones just says, you suck. You suck. You suck. And the fact is that, Daniel, you're not on an even playing field, bro. And the more excited you get, the dumber you look. It's like quicksand. Like, it's cool to not care, buddy. So you can't sit there and be like, oh, my God, I'm going to make this poignant argument about how you are as a socioeconomic individual. No, shut up. Just call him a dickhole and move on, you dickhole. But anyway, I think that I would like to put $5 on Ovince St. Preux. I'm not going to be surprised if Jon Jones wins. It's going to be interesting to see the lead up to that fight. One thing I really, really want to talk about was that Ovince St. Preux learned about this fight while he was going through the drive-thru at KFC. But here's the ticker.
You can't make that up.
He gives the woman the money and says, I don't want the food, and goes. So he paid, and that's a nice guy. That's like as opposite of a hit and run as you can get. Because he totally could have just driven away.
It's funny because it's like he's totally at the KFC. He's just like, yeah, I don't got to worry about it. I mean, when's my next fight? I got a little bit to go. I'm going to go ahead and pig out. He gets the phone call. He's like, fuck, I can't eat this shit.
And then it's KFC, so they just gave it to the next person because it's all pre-made bullshit anyway. So, Ovince, you're a nice guy. And so for that, I'm going to throw $5 away on you.
Good call.
Speaking of throwing money away, apparently people in Japan, Ryzen FF, have too much money, so they're just going to pay over-the-hill fighters to do stupid shit. Wanderlei Silva,
tag team,
Sakuraba, they're on tag team.
Is it a tag team?
Tag team grappling.
How does that even make sense?
He didn't even know. Wanderlei couldn't even tell Ariel Helwani the rules to the shit that he's going to be in less than 2 weeks. Are you fucking kidding me?
I mean, literally, it was just like, wait, I could be on any steroids I want? All right, I'm in.
What the fuck is this? It's absolute nonsense. And then who, of all the people in Bellator, do you think that Wanderlei said he wanted to fight when he goes to Bellator? Kimbo Slice, testosterone addict, apparently. What are these shenanigans?
Yeah, I don't know.
I used to love Wanderlei, and I was under no illusions that he was a clean fighter. but he was a dirty fighter in an era where all were dirty fighters.
Yeah.
And now he's like clinging to the good old days, like, oh, back in the day, it was the head stomps that made me so effective. No, it was not. So you telling Ariel that you wanted those fighting rules has nothing to do.
I always thought it was the rape jokes that made him so effective.
Oh, good. But do you have any thoughts on Wanderlei Silva versus Kimbo Slice and the shit show that would be?
Coming off the Kimbo Slice Dada 5000.
Well, imagine this, if you will. I'll set the billing up for you. You have Wanderlei, the axe murderer Silva, versus Kimbo, the actual murderer Slice. Because Dada 5000 today says that he died not once, but twice from heart attacks in his fight with Kimbo Slice, and that he had kidney failure. So you have a guy who's actually killed someone. And then I guess by punching him in the tit, resuscitated his heart twice.
I don't know. I think that some of those backyard fights on YouTube from Kimbo Slice, he might have actually killed some people. Those aren't sanctioned though, so technically it doesn't matter.
They edited those a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, I would watch it. If that's sad to say, I mean, it's one of those things that it's like the Ken Shamrock, Ken Shamrock, Kimbo Slice, Ken Shamrock, Hoist Gracie. Like,
it's the shit we
it's literally the train wreck, right? Yeah. It's where you're like, oh God, I can't believe all this awful nastiness is happening, but I can't seem to look away.
Yeah, and I think we kind of talked about this in previous episodes with the idea that we're not going to watch it live. We're going to watch the Vine of it 3 days later. So it's not like they're going to get
Someone's going to send me a link on Facebook.
Yeah.
That's how I'm going to watch this.
With those stupid captions at the top and bottom with like emojis in it say, look at guy die, lol, 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 lol.
And I would still watch it.
Click.
I would still watch it.
Like. Wow.
I wouldn't share it though. I would not
share.
I would not share it. I'm above that.
Also Bellator related, Rampage Jackson, guy who says he's sick of getting wrestle-humped, is apparently totally cool with fighting Satoshi Ishii, an Olympic grappler.
Nope. Why?
What happened to fighting titties? You know that something's fucked in this organization when you want him to fight a Ultimate Fighter cast-off named Titties over an Olympic wrestler.
I don't know. I feel like he should have just stuck with professional gaming or whatever the fuck he's been doing lately.
Oh, he still is. I think that might be why he's doing a 215 catch weight, so he doesn't have to lose as much weight, so he can play a little more Xbox.
You still drink that Mountain Dew while he's gaming it up or something,
right? Dragging these nuts on your face. You guys should check out when he called Donald Cerrone. It's pretty great. That's all I can talk about for Bellator for this week, or I'm literally going to fucking kill myself out of shame and embarrassment.
Right.
One other thing that we wanted to talk about was the Ultimate Fighter. What the fuck? Demetrius Johnson has killed so many people in the octagon. They're just trying to find fuckers off the street.
Literally laid waste. Like, yeah, it's one of those things where it's like open call, whoever wants to get their ass beat. I feel like that should be the name of the Ultimate Fighter.
Yeah. The ultimate sucker. The guy who's conned into thinking he's got a chance. But it's not like this. Sorry, it's not like it's unprecedented because the Ultimate Fighter comeback season, Matt Serra got a shot at the welterweight title, ended up winning the welterweight title.
Right, that's true.
But those were people who had UFC experience. We're talking about people who haven't fought in the UFC, just coming off the street being like, hey, I want to live in a mansion with six dudes.
Who's your prize fighter in that weight class? Fuck it. I'm going to take him.
Yeah.
I got it.
Their only hope is that they're finding people who lived in fucking caves. Because I get if you're a casual fan, you don't know who Mighty Mouse is. But if you're in the 125-pound division and you don't know who he is, you're doing something wrong because he is the pinnacle of what you're trying to be. Demetrius Johnson is the Anderson Silva of 125.
Absolutely.
When Chris Weidman got into MMA, Anderson Silva was a champion already. And so his whole career leading up to Silva was looking at Silva and wanting to go after him. It's the same thing with DJ now, where he's the guy who's the champion. People who are just starting their careers are trying to go up to beat DJ. It's kind of fascinating. And what's funny, I don't see DJ slowing down, motherfuckers.
It's one of those things that I don't know. I feel like maybe the UFC is like scratching their heads at this point. That's the only thing that comes to mind. I don't know what else to do.
In my opinion, I think that it very much implies that they don't believe in Henry Cejudo. Because the fact is, if Henry became champion, you have an instant rematch. Because DJ has such a long career as champion. You have Joseph Benavidez. They already have beef. And Joseph Benavidez has proved he can beat anybody at flyweight not named Demetrius Johnson. There's a bunch of fights. But in this scenario, we already have a show that's going to generate a number one contender. So it's almost like they're saying, we know this guy's not going to win.
Cejudo's, it's literally like a throwaway.
Yeah. I honestly feel that's like kind of what they're doing. And then after that, it's almost like Cejudo's looking at Benavidez like, hey, when I lose to DJ, we should totally fight because that's the best that we're going to do in this division, my man.
Yeah.
And if somebody could please get on the phone and call Henry Cejudo and tell him to cut his hair differently so he stops looking like the guy from the plane, boss, the plane. I'm not trying. I don't know if it's racist to say that,
really
but
good.
It's the same fucking
really
haircut
good.
with like the comb over, and he's like the same height. I don't know what I'm doing here, but it's a little weird to me. Brian, are there any other UFC related? Oh, I want to talk about Conor McGregor, UFC 200. The fact that he's Ivan Drago in this scenario. He's officially Ivan Drago because he posted a picture with a breathing mask and a computer in a science laboratory. And
that's supposed to make you believe like he's doing some kind of like crazy next level shit that's going to make him like that much better than Nate Diaz as far as when it comes to cardio. Like
Nate Diaz is somewhere just running.
Right.
Like a mountain.
Right. You're talking about a guy who does triathlons for fun.
Right.
Like, come on, man.
Sorry, bro. So not only do you have to catch up with him in cardio, you now also have to catch up with him in jiu-jitsu and striking, because let's not forget he rocked your ass. So it's kind of...
It's true. He handled that left, the famous left, right?
Yeah. So maybe that's Conor's plan, is that he's going to be, taking a page out of Bruce Lee's book and being like water. Water crashes upon the rock over and over again, and eventually the rock withers away. And so Conor's like, I'll just keep getting rematches, motherfucker, because Dana White's my bitch, and I can just do whatever I want.
All I gotta say is, in the rematch, if Nate Diaz Stockton slaps Conor McGregor, I don't care if Nate Diaz loses. I feel like he wins.
He's
no matter what.
Yeah,
you know what I mean? Like, if you can fucking slap him in the face, imagine the amount of shit that Conor McGregor would get. And then not only that, but imagine how much shit he would lose. Like, he would lose his mind in a fight if some guy literally... You're talking about an egotistical egomaniac in Conor McGregor thinking he's like the best fighter in the world getting bitch slapped. How amazing would that be?
Pretty rad.
Could you imagine like a triangle? Like
I was honestly kind of surprised that Nate Diaz, when he was on Conor's back, didn't a little pelvic thrust to establish dominance. Like, you're my bitch, and you know it.
Right. Could you imagine like Conor McGregor on top, Nate Diaz throwing up that triangle, and then just having McGregor like this, and then have him just be like, smack right in the face.
Pats him on the back of the head, just push it down to the crotch. Push it down. I don't know why it is that male dominance always leads to like sexually abusing another human being, but I feel like
it's true.
I feel like that establishes Nate as a somewhat good person. At the very minimum, he's a decent human being because he didn't hump Conor McGregor when he had his back.
It would be pretty amazing.
But like, let's talk about the dichotomy. You have this guy who has everything, in the money and the fame and the wealth, and then you have this dude who lived in the sticks and made no money, and now he's got something. It's like Clubber Lang the first time he fought Rocky. It's like Rocky when he's living in the shed. It's like Rocky when he's fighting Apollo Creed.
It's like Buster Douglas and Mike Tyson.
Yeah. But in this situation, like, Conor's not a sympathetic hero. He's a guy who. What's funny is like the diehard MMA fans. We were gonna watch UFC 200 anyway, so we kind of got suckered into this because it's gonna bring in the casuals. We as UFC fans weren't gonna miss UFC 200, so they kind of had this false illusion that people give a shit. It's like, I don't really care about that fight. I didn't think it needed to happen. It doesn't need to get rolled back. There was no conspiracy. Nate Diaz won. But because it's Conor McGregor and it's UFC 200, it's just by default people are going to watch it. And so I think the people are giving it more credence than it deserves. Given the fact it's at a weight class, doesn't make sense. Given all these other things that go along with it. So it's just the more and more I think about this fight, the more I analyze it. I don't care to see it, but I'm not going to miss it. And that kind of frustrates me.
Right,
I'm critical of myself in this situation. Right?
God damn it. I'm going to watch it.
Fart. So with that, this has been the Overtime MMA broadcast for the week of April something.
April, yeah, something. See you guys.